In building a statue, the sculptor doesn't keep adding clay to his subject. Actually, he keeps chiseling away at the non-essentials until the truth of his creation is revealed without obstruction. Bruce Lee. Good afternoon, everybody. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a while and probably get back into reading a lot of philosophical things that I didn't really focus on when I was younger. I mean, when I was really into watching martial arts movies and things like that, and Bruce Lee, of course, was one of my favorite martial artists to watch on screen. And when I read his Tao of Jeet Kune, I was mainly focused on the physical application, the philosophy of using what's essential in martial arts, and not necessarily in life in particular. Now that I'm in a different state, you could say, I'm gonna go ahead and focus on reading from his Tao Jeet Kune and how it relates to my experiences and the philosophy of what I've been, I guess, trying to get at, which is always the truth, and that's hard to come by because it's mostly based on what we can experience. And sometimes what we experience cannot be explained. Therefore, was it really real in a sense? And does it even matter if it is what you think is real or not? For example, I use this quite often. Hi, Nicholas Burnett. I'm bleached. Playing a video game with friends, right? You're talking you're talking to each other, whatever it is. Like, I'll play a game with my brother. We're on Discord and we're just talking to each other while we're playing a game. We enjoy the game. We laugh and make fun of each other sometimes and all this other stuff. But what we're doing isn't anything real. It's in a video game. It's something that doesn't physically exist. I mean, we can see it physically on the screen. We can interact with it, but it's not like we're working with anything that we can physically manipulate in just a natural sense. Like, instead of playing games, well, if we played Monopoly, that would be more of a physical thing. Video games can be interpreted as really not real. It's a virtual type of thing, but still, the interactions that we have with each other when we're playing the video game, a different reality, I guess you could say, it's still real. It's still authentic. We still have an interaction. All right. So anyways, I'm gonna focus on the beginning, which is on Zen, and then work towards the end, and gonna skip a lot of the training aspects of martial arts and the techniques, and actually just focus on the philosophy that Bruce Lee has, because there really isn't that much. I mean, it's a good amount, and it's something interesting to focus on and revisit, since I haven't read the Tao of Jeet Kune since I was probably 16 or something like that. It's just a good 35 years. No, wait, 30? 25 years? Yeah, something around that. Okay, so this first one, to obtain enlightenment in martial art means the extinction of everything which obscures the true knowledge, the real life. Now, I find it interesting that he puts in quotes the real life, and also in quotes true knowledge, right? There's knowledge, and previously I put knowledge as just knowing a thing with it not necessarily being true or not. And this one, he definitely emphasizes true knowledge, right? So rather than having knowledge of something that's not true, like say you have all the knowledge in the world about the Easter Bunny, but does the Easter Bunny really exist? Type of thing. So far, most people would say no. No indication that the Easter Bunny is real, but you've got all this knowledge about the Easter Bunny. But true knowledge would be something about, well, if you have knowledge about bunnies in general, you've got a lot of true knowledge. Okay, and the real life, and which is interesting. What does he mean by a real life? I mean, isn't all life real? You would think. Anyways, I think he goes beyond the physical material aspect of life and incorporates that without the beyond the material part, what really constitutes the purpose of the material. Anyways, that's just kind of my interpretation. You can always have your own. What we're trying to do is just find the truth without any obstruction. And to do that, you really have to be honest with yourself first, because if you're not going to be honest with yourself, you're not going to find the truth. You're just going to have more obstruction. All right. And so it goes on. At the same time, it implies boundless expansion, and indeed, emphasis should not fall on the cultivation of the particular department which merges into the totality, but rather on the totality that enters and unites that particular department. So it's not just limiting yourself pretty much into one little faction. Like, it's not just Bruce Lee. His life was based on being the best actor. It's about how that being the best actor reflects how he expresses himself in his life and things like that. And I think when you see a lot of documentaries about Bruce Lee and how Bruce Lee talks about things like that, you can probably understand a little bit better on what he means by that part. Okay, and we're not going to go over his whole life. I think most people know a lot about Bruce Lee, so I don't have to worry about all that stuff. The way to transcend karma lies in the proper use of the mind and the will. The oneness of all life is a truth that can be fully realized only when false notions of a separate self, whose destiny can be considered apart from the whole, are forever annihilated. It's almost like a destruction of ego type of ideal. It's like, rather than adding personas to ourselves to make us look bigger to others and make us look more grandiose and awesome, right? It's putting on an act. It's to actually do away with all of that, all those false notions of what yourself is, and just remove it from yourself. And you're going to realize that you're going to have a proper use for yourself. That fake part of yourself is pretty much useless in many ways. It doesn't get anything done. Imagine, acting like you're like the best at some game, best at some job, best at some whatever. You're really not. You're just pretending to be, and have that false notion of confidence. You're really not confident because you have to lie, right? So that's not really confidence. You're just building upon this false sense of confidence that everyone sees as, hey, that person's pretty confident. But deep down, no, not really. So that type of thing. And once you do away with that false confidence, what do you get? You get true confidence, right? All right. So the next one, and we may have to, there's always some stuff on the side, so I'll have to keep a lookout on that. Next one, voidness is that which stands right in the middle between this and that. The void is all-inclusive, having no opposite. There is nothing which it excludes or opposes. It is living void because all forms come out of it, and whoever realizes the void is filled with life and power and the love of all beings. That one is something that cannot really be explained, so I may not even try for it. But you'll often find something similar to this in many philosophies, especially Greek philosophy, which I find interesting how Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy kind of merge into the same idea in certain things. And even before I started really getting back into philosophy, my experience with ayahuasca it really resonates with philosophies that I read and reflect on, and some of them I see more reflective of what I experienced than others. Not necessarily saying that others may be wrong, I just don't know. Maybe I haven't even gotten there yet. So there is a weird I'm not even gonna try and explain it. I've tried explaining it before. It's tough. So, I may have to get back to that one at a later date. Here's an analogy. Turn into a doll made of wood. It has no ego. It thinks nothing. It is not grasping or sticky. Let the body and limbs work themselves out in accordance with the discipline they have undergone. Yeah. So it's just kind of simply put, it just is, right? Just let things flow naturally is just another way to interpret it. The consciousness of self is the greatest hindrance to the proper execution of all physical action. Yeah, it's I would say it's like practicing a technique like a punch, okay? And you're focusing on yourself punching. You're not going to use that punch in the greatest way, I guess you could say, by focusing on how your body moves and how you follow through on a punch, how you may use your hips or whatever. What you want to do is use that punch and what the purpose of that punch is going to do, and thus you're going to try out all these different types of punches and use your body in different ways. See what's the most effective part of that punch on whatever that you're trying to do with that punch. If you're punching a punching bag, you're trying to punch through a piece of wood, punch through grains of sand, whatever. And so whether you're trying to make it so that it doesn't hurt so much, or that you're just applying more power to it. If you focus more on yourself and how it looks, it's not necessarily going to apply very well, whatever you're doing with that punch. You really want to focus on the different ways of how that punch is going to actually be essential to what it's supposed to do, right? It's like playing basketball. I play basketball, or at least I played a lot. And I used to score pretty well, but it didn't look very good, right? But the whole point of basketball isn't to look good. It's not supposed to look stylish. I mean, you probably get bonus points if you look stylish and you score a point. But the goal is, of course, to win the game, score points if you're trying to shoot the ball or go for a layup. But I play with a lot of people who look stylish, and people go ooh ah, except they'll miss. And me is like, I score, it doesn't look very pretty, and they go, ooh, people give me those types of voices and stuff. And for me, it didn't matter. I wasn't about looking good while I'm taking a shot. I was taking a shot to score, and if it scores, it works for me, right? So don't worry about how that technique looks when you're applying it. Just focus on what the result is that you're looking for with that application. This next one: if nothing within you stays rigid, Outward things will disclose themselves. Moving, be like water. Still, be like a mirror. Respond like an echo. So try not to, I guess you could say, think too much. It's like, if you're trying to mimic someone else doing the, copying exact motions or whatever they're doing, it's easier when you're not thinking about it. You just mimic them as they move, and not really focus on the minute details. And then once you get used to the motions that they have, you can focus on the details as you've kind of focused on just the general movement of things. And when you're doing that, you're not really concentrating on anything else. You're just focused on what you're trying to do, whether it's being mirrored, or if you're reacting, is not to be so tense and to wait for it, but to relax, and when it happens, react with it, and not necessarily being like waiting for something to happen. Let that thing happen, then react to it, rather than planning on reacting a certain way and waiting for that to happen. By that time, you're going to be a little bit rigid. You're not going to flow correctly. You're not going to move in the way that you really planned. You could do that in practice. You can practice things, but when the situation comes, you don't wait for that situation to come and then react to that situation. You react to a situation that occurs, and therefore all that practice, you don't even have to think about it. Your body reacts in the way that you've wanted to react in that situation, if that situation occurs. I mean, whatever it is that you have, whether it's fighting, whether it's technical things, whether it's artwork, practicing a stroke, with painting, whatever it is once you see that opportunity where it presents itself, you just go ahead and do it, rather than trying to concentrate where to force that application within that moment, right? It's like, I learned this new technique. I really want to use it. And well, unfortunately, I don't see any reason to use that technique in this particular moment. And thus you go, well, let's just try it. And you try it, and it's like, it didn't work, But once you see a moment where one of your techniques can be useful, you're just right there. You're ready to use it. You're not forcing anything. You're not rigid. That's the way I like to think about it. Oops. Nothingness cannot be defined. The softest thing cannot be snapped. I mean, I remember it's like going, even nature has a great thing. If you go out and you want to break some sticks, you find the dead sticks, right? And they're not springy at all. They're just hard and snaps pretty easily. And then you go to a live tree. You're like, this is a thin branch. I'll go ahead and break it off. And then you try to break it off, it just bends, and you twist it the other way and whatever, and all it does, is it just keeps bending and it doesn't snap off. It's alive, it's springy. So sometimes what you think might be something simple or something difficult, once you really grasp actually attempting something that's easy or difficult, you'll know whether it's easy or difficult, and you kind of have an idea that you can get to is why is it easy, or why is it difficult. If I told my daughter to break a big, thick, dead stick, she's gonna say, I ask her, is that gonna be easy or hard to break? And she goes, that's gonna be hard because it's big. And so she goes and she breaks it, and she goes, that was easy. And then I'll go tell her to break a really thin branch off of a tree, and she'll try, and she'll go, oh, that's going to be easy. Of course, she's going to see that it's smaller than the bigger, thicker dead branch. And she tries it, and she's going to be like, hey, this is really hard. Why? And of course, she'll figure out why. Hi, Brianna Hasbert. Some of these, I'm going to have to, at least the last one, I'm going to have to hide myself so you guys can see the words. All right. I'm moving and not moving at all. I'm like the moon underneath the waves that ever go on rolling and rocking. It is not I am doing this, but rather an inner realization that this is happening through me, or it is doing this for me. The consciousness of self is the greatest hindrance to the proper execution of all physical action. Oh, okay, I kind of went through that. This has just more imagery involved, so you can kind of visualize it a little bit better. So yeah, don't focus too much on yourself. Focus on what you're doing through yourself. You know, I kind of liken it to when you have these ideas pop in your head. Is that you formulating these ideas, or are those ideas just moving through whatever space that it's moving through, and you're just able to pick up on it? And some people, maybe they're just not aware of something like that. It's tough to tell, but it's like, where does something like that, where that you would never think of some idea or some creative thing, and all of a sudden it pops into your head. It's like, how did you formulate that? How does it just happen? Okay, so let me hide myself. The localization of the mind means it's freezing. When it ceases to flow freely as it is needed, is no more the mind in its suchness. So I would say it's, if you're too focused on one particular aspect of how you're trying to get at it, say a solution to a problem, right? You're constantly, it's almost like thinking outside the box. Don't be entrapped within a certain way of thinking. For example, a lot of education in public schools, even private schools, will tell you to solve this problem, and solve the problem in the way that we want you to solve the problem. Even though you may find 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ways of solving the problem, they'll always want you to focus on the one problem they say is the right way to solve the problem. And then, your mind is just stuck in that same way of solving that problem every time, rather than freeing your mind into solving it different ways. And then you get into a real life situation where that same issue comes up. It's slightly different, and you try applying it the same way the education system has you solve that problem, and you cannot solve it through that way. And right now, and in that instance, your mind is stuck. It's like, well, I was taught the way to do this was through schooling, and now it's not working. So what do I do now? You're just stuck. But then the majority of the time, you're going to find solutions that's outside of how the school taught you how to do it. And if you really think about it, a lot of the education in schools that are taught are usually a couple years behind, right? The person who's teaching the curriculum, or whatever the curriculum that's being brought down, it's a couple years behind. And if you really think about it in technology, in technological terms, that's always advancing. How good is it to learn from a book that's 5 to 10 years old, as opposed to reading a book that's just the latest on a specific language, on all the things you can do within all the technology that you can incorporate into it. So sorry, I'm getting the technical aspects of all this, but it's just something that I have experience with, so it's easier for me to explain in that context. Okay. Here's the next page. The immovable is the concentration of energy at a given focus. as at the axis of a wheel instead of dispersal and scattered activities. Yeah, so just I would just say yesterday I took my son and daughter to the park to play, and there's this weird, it's kind of like a series of bars that go up a little bit higher each time so you could get onto the main platform. My son goes onto that thing, and I'm always just waiting for him in case he falls. And sometimes he loses focus. Or this one time he lost his focus. He's concentrating on what my daughter was doing, Leela, and he slipped and he kind of fell. And I was there to catch him, so it wasn't that hard of a fall. And he knows to concentrate now because he doesn't like the idea of falling. But he'll still do it, and when he does it, he's just a little more focused. He's concentrating on what needs to be done. If he's going to try to reach that platform on that thing, you'd rather be concentrating on getting to that platform without falling, rather than focusing everything around you and not necessarily what you're trying to do. The point is the doing of them rather than the accomplishments. There's no actor but the action. There's no experiencer but the experience. Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of that in today's society, you could say, or maybe even yesterday's society, right? Focus more on the accomplishments rather than the actual doing for it. Like, say people want to become a doctor, and rather than understanding a lot about medicine, they go through the motions to get that diploma, to get that recognition, that credential. Say, look, I've accomplished my studies, now I can apply it. Except rather than knowing to apply it correctly, regardless if they get accomplishments or not, they're more focused on figuring out how to be a better doctor rather than being a better student. So the experience in itself is better than the act of that experience in order to get recognition for that experience, that which you didn't really have. It'd be similar to trying to I don't know, let's see. Rather than saying that, okay, for example, what's the point of being a doctor to you? Is it to help people who are sick and heal them? Or is it to make a lot of money? Because I know a lot of Asian parents, especially, they go, I want you to grow up, be a doctor and a lawyer. And it's like, well, why do you want me to be a doctor or a lawyer? And they'll go, well, you'll be more respectable and you'll get a lot of money. It's like, the whole purpose of being a lawyer, you would think, is to help people who are in trouble with the law. Or being a doctor would be helping people who are sick and injured and healing them so they're not sick or injured. Yet again, the parents are thinking more about your safety, your whatever nest egg, being able to live on your own comfortably, type of thing. But they're not really focused on what you do with that profession, but they're more focused on what you get with by doing that profession within society. And that's where I always go, no, I don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer just because of that, because that's not what I want to do. All right. To see a thing uncolored by one's own personal preferences and desires is to see it in its own pristine simplicity. I'd say just a breakdown of just what is natural to you, So I guess one simple way to do this is you want to walk cool, right? Practice walking cool. You have to have a swagger, right? You go a certain way, and it's just you want to appear something like that to others with using that swagger. And but when people see that, they'll probably go, "Why are you walking like that? That's why are you walking so funny, or why are you walking like that all of a sudden?" And then why don't you walk normally? And then you've realized that you've walked that way so long that trying to walk normal just seems like an alien thing to do, and so you have to kind of focus on how to walk normal. And you're like, I don't remember how I walk normal or naturally, right? And so you just want to, if you're just gonna walk and not think about it, to somewhere, like, just if you're in private, you're not in public, no one's watching you, you realize that that's just your normal walk. You don't have to think about your normal walk and how you used to do your normal walk. So all these things that you realize that you do in public as opposed to what you do in private, those are things you may have to also work on, because sometimes when you try to do things, no longer do things that as you did in public as you would do in private, you start realizing, I have to think about how to do things naturally. And you forget. Well, just try not to just focus on how your natural self extends out into the public arena, you could say. I mean, I'm probably interpreting that wrong. That's just kind of how I see it right there. Art reaches its greatest peak when devoid of self-consciousness. Freedom discovers man the moment he loses concern over what impression he's making or about to make. Now, my previous example is more along the lines of that. The perfect way is only difficult for those who pick and choose. Do not like, do not dislike, all will then be clear. Excuse me. Make a hairbreadth difference, and heaven and earth are set apart. If you want the truth to stand clear before you, never be for or against. The struggle between for and against is the mind's worst disease. He can even apply that to society and the always conflict that occurs between whatever the system might set up for you. Right? Choose. You're either be on our side or you're on the other side. Either you're an ally or you're an enemy. People who give you, you have to pick one or the other, and there's no in between. There's no outside. There's no third party. There's no whatever. It's you realize that's just creating more of the problem, and rather than picking and choosing and liking one side or the other, just see what it is on both sides. I think how you apply that to yourself is, I guess in martial arts, I guess if you're focused on that, it's like, well, am I either going to be a someone who wants like a one particular style over another, and therefore I'll just focus on that, right? You're going to be kind of trapped between just understanding one thing and not necessarily understanding the other thing. And if you wanted to get the best of both worlds, you want to understand both sides of it. So it's the best way is to not choose between just one thing, is just to understand both sides and choose both in certain aspects and not choose both. You don't get any conflict within yourself. You don't get any conflict with those outside of you. And most likely people will understand. And if they don't understand, they're probably in conflict with themselves anyway. So wisdom does not consist of trying to wrest the good from the evil, but in learning to ride them as a cork adapts itself to the crests and troughs of the waves. I guess, I think what it is we try as humans to set things in stone, set things in writing, set things so that once it's set, there's no deviation from it. We accept whatever is set as immovable. For example, say like any one of the 10 Commandments, like thou shalt not kill. Well, what happens if someone is killing others, and the only way to stop that person is to kill them, because you don't have the power to just not kill them, right? You can't just, if they have like guns and they're shooting everybody and you've got a gun but you don't want to kill them, so you try to shoot them in the leg or whatever, and not kill them, and they still end up killing more people because, well, you didn't kill them. So and of course, if they're killing everybody, what do most people who want to stop that killer do? They have to kill him. Well, so you killed, is that the same thing as what the killer was doing in the first place? It's not necessarily set, because, well, now you have to adjust it. Well, if you're killing someone who's killing people, you could say that there's just cause for that killing. So it's not the same as just in general, do not kill people. And so there's a lot of things that you could say aren't set in stone. But the thing is, if we want to really do what's correct, I guess, for you, is to just adapt to that situation, not have those types of things set within yourself as rules, strict rules to follow, because that's just going to put you into this weird sort of situation and box where you're going to let things happen that you wouldn't really want happen, but because of these set rules that you set up within yourself, or maybe society set up for you and you want to follow it, well, you can't really adapt and make things better, right? Everything is going to stay stagnant because it's not the right way to handle that situation. A lot of kids that grow up can't handle certain situations because they've only been told how to react to certain situations in a specified way. You go through these directions. Here's these directions. 1 through 5. Follow these directions. 1 through 11. This happens. Follow these directions. 1 through 12. They don't understand how to adapt to any situation that doesn't seem to be in accordance with those directions that they're supposed to follow. And that's kind of the problem with education and critical thinking. We don't give the individual that ability to handle the situation themselves. We tell them, you have to follow the rules and how to handle a specific situation. Don't use your own judgment. All these rules, and they're not that good. Like in general instances, you can say that they'll apply pretty well, but to not let not give people the tools to be able to critically think and make up a mind for themselves, and to question whether or not they should or shouldn't do it, and maybe the repercussions of what happens if they do it or not. And if they choose to know that there are repercussions that they're going to have to face, well, they're going to maybe take responsibility for it, right? And when time comes where they have to explain themselves, they have a valid reason. They know what they did and what they had to do. They can live with themselves. It was a conscious decision on their part rather than just a following type of orders thing, right? Oh, interesting one with now the COVID-19. Let yourself go with the disease. Be with it, keep company with it. This is a way to be rid of it. I would say, I mean, it's funny because you could read all of this and apply it with martial arts. But if you apply it with just life in general and anything else, it can work. And that's what's interesting about philosophy. is usually it's it's meant to portray what's a good natural solution, I guess you could say, at to one particular thing, but it applies to almost everything else. And that's why you would call it like the philosophy of truth, because that truth, that philosophy applies to everything. But if you use it in context with something that's specific in some way, it can be helpful. For example, let's say you get sick with a cold. Rather than fighting the symptoms of the cold, like you're coughing, well, you want to suppress the coughing because society says you don't want to cough. But what you're actually doing when you're coughing is you're letting all the bad stuff out. And if you're sneezing and your mucus up, you go to pharmaceutical, they'll say you're going to suppress that mucus. But in reality, you don't want that disease to be inside your system. You want to expel all that stuff. Your body is naturally trying to get rid of whatever it is that's not good with your body. It'd be like, well, I have a lot of diarrhea, so I'm gonna go to the pharmacy and get anti-diarrhea pills. Well, your body, and thus you're not gonna go purge whatever that needs to happen, and thus that stays within you and it's not going to go away. So the best thing to do is get rid of all the bad stuff that your body's supposed to get rid of, rather than contain it and let it fester. That disease is just going to stay around for a longer time. Your symptoms are going to stay around for a longer time. It's going to create instances where your body's not going to deal with it the correct way, because, well, now your body's, your mind, body, whatever is telling you what you need to do, and you're doing the opposite of it. How you doing, Kozak? Original or concept? Well, so I'm just going over the Tao of Jeet Kune, just the philosophical part that Bruce Lee had in with his experiences with different types of religions and philosophy within those religions, or just philosophy in general, and applying them to what he probably tries to get those who want to be better at something to focus on. And I'm just trying to maybe help along the lines based on my own experience and philosophy. An assertion is Zen only when it is itself an act and does not refer to anything that is asserted in it. That one is a tough one. I'm gonna have to skip that one or think about it later. Anyways, I'll keep it going here. And so also one of the things I like to do in general, and I think it's a helpful advice to people who even study, is like, if you get stuck on a problem, like you have 20 problems and you have to figure them out, and you go through, well, you're on number 4, and number 4 you're stuck on it for like 2 minutes, and it goes, and rather than stay on it and you're stuck for 5 minutes, and rather you stay on it and you go stuck in it for 10 minutes, just skip it and come back to it when you're ready. There's no point in just staying stuck at that particular place and not moving on, where you can't do something else that's productive, and come back to that problem later. And there may be a time when you come back to it and you still can't figure it out, but that's fine, because you've got these other problems that you've resolved. And anyways, that's just helpful advice I guess from me. And that'll probably help if you're a student and you really want it do well on tests, because a lot of these tests are timed these days, which doesn't make sense in my opinion, but that's fine. That's just the way education is these days. In Buddhism, there's no place for using effort. Just be ordinary and nothing special. Eat your food, move your bowels, pass water, and when you're tired, go and lie down. The ignorant will laugh at me, but the wise will understand. Yeah. I think my wife doesn't like this very much because, she's strictly following the regimen of society. You eat your breakfast at this time, you eat your lunch at this time, you eat your supper, dinner at this time, you go to bed at this time, you wake up at this time, you go to work at this time, etc. For me, it's not that anymore. It's like, and my mother was the same way. It's like, it's morning time, I'm not hungry, so I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to force myself to eat. Same thing with the kids. They're not hungry, try feeding them food, they're not going to eat it. And then an hour goes by, they are hungry. You go, well, I just made you food, eat that food. Now it's all cold. They don't want to eat it, but they will, and they're not enjoying their food. Well, just wait till they're hungry and then make them their food, and all that type of stuff. Just trying to get my son to take a nap when, that's kind of the thing that my wife does. I say, if he doesn't want to take a nap, don't take a nap. But of course, you can see signs when he's tired and he wants to take a nap. So you can go ahead and use your judgment there. So sometimes when I see that he's tired, it looks like it's time for a nap. You want to go take a nap? And he'll take a nap and he'll sleep for like 3-4 hours. So yeah, when I go tired, I just lie down and I fall asleep. I remember when I was on a strict regimen. Hi, Roland. You want to come here? You want to go to a playground?
With my lion.
With your lion? What's your lion going to do at the playground? Excuse me.
You going to play with me?
Come here, Roland. Are you going to go with Mama, or do you want me to come? Or want me to take you?
Mama.
You want Mama?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was busy on the garden.
Okay. So she's not.
You have to do it.
All right. Well, stay tuned for part 2. I thought I would be able to get this done, but I don't know what I'm thinking sometimes. I'm gonna take him out to the park.
Okay.
All right. Give me a few minutes. All right. Thank you for joining me. I'll do a continuation part 2 of this, and I'll see y'all later.